The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the UES Vigilant. Commander Alex Daniels stood with his hands behind his back, watching the main screen. Space had been quiet for almost 20 years since the agreement with Exultari. The insect-like aliens had kept to their side of the border, and humans had stayed on theirs. "Commander, we have unusual readings at the edge of the demilitarized zone," said Lieutenant Ryan Kelly. His fingers moved quickly across his console. "It appears to be an Exultari vessel." Alex moved closer to look at the data. "What are they doing there?" "Mining operations, sir, on the protected planet." Alex frowned. The protected planets were off-limits to both species under the peace treaty. The Exultari knew this as well as humans did. "Set a course to intercept. Standard approach." "No weapons active," he ordered. The ship hummed as it changed direction. Dr. Olivia Mitchell entered the bridge and stood beside Alex. "I heard we have visitors," she said. Alex nodded. "Exultari. In a place they shouldn't be." Olivia was the ship's expert on alien life. She had studied the Exultari for years. "They don't make navigation mistakes, Alex. Their systems are too good for that." "I know. That's what worries me." The UES Vigilant approached the small rocky planet. The Exultari ship was easy to spot with its curved, shell-like design. It hovered over an open mining pit, extracting rare minerals from below the surface. "Open communications," Alex ordered. Lieutenant Kelly pressed a button. "Channel open, sir." "Exultari vessel, this is Commander Alex Daniels of the Earth Defense Force. You are operating in protected space in violation of the Treaty of Proxima. Please cease all activities immediately." The screen flickered and showed the face of Exultari. Its compound eyes reflected the light, and its mandibles clicked as it spoke in translated English. "UES Vigilant, we apologize for any confusion. Our navigation systems must have malfunctioned. We believed we were still in permitted space." Alex didn't believe it for a second. "Your current position is 15 light minutes inside the neutral zone. That's quite a navigation error." The Exultari's antenna twitched. "We will depart immediately. We will escort you back to the border," Alex said. It wasn't a request. After the Exultari ship had left the system under the Vigilance watch, Alex called a meeting in the ship's conference room. Olivia Mitchell sat with her datapad, while Lieutenant Kelly pulled up sensor readings on the main screen. "They were lying," Olivia said. "I picked up encrypted transmissions during our encounter. They were sending data back to their territory the entire time." Kelly nodded. "And that wasn't just a mining ship. Our scans detected weapons systems far more advanced than a simple resource vessel would need. Weapons prohibited by the treaty." Alex looked at the evidence before him. "They were testing us, seeing how we would respond." "Sir, I've received a message from Admiral Grant," said Kelly, checking his console. "We're to return to Earth for debriefing. The Admiral is concerned but wants to maintain diplomatic channels." "Tell him we're on our way," Alex replied. Later, in his private quarters, Alex viewed the historical records of human-Exultari relations. The screen showed images from the Proxima incident 15 years ago. Earth forces had cornered a Exultari fleet that had strayed into human space. Instead of destroying them, humanity had shown mercy and let them return home. It had led to the peace treaty they now lived under. "Computer, contact Admiral Grant," Alex said. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. "Commander Daniels, I've reviewed your report. Troubling, but we need more evidence before we make accusations." "Sir, I believe this was deliberate. A test of our response times and procedures." The Admiral frowned. "Perhaps, but we chose mercy once, and it gave us peace. Let's not rush to judgment." Alex nodded, but something didn't feel right. As he ended the call, Olivia sent him a message. "I've decoded more of their transmissions. You need to see this." The decoded text scrolled across his screen. "Defense protocols recorded. Response time noted. Humans remain predictable. Proceed to Phase 2. Alex stared at the words, a chill running down his spine. Humanity had shown mercy before. He wondered if they would regret it. 2 weeks passed. Alex sat in a large meeting room at Earth Defense Headquarters. The room was filled with military officers and government officials. Captain Sofia Rodriguez stood at the front, pointing to a map of space that showed dozens of red dots along the border. "This is not just one incident anymore," she said. "We've recorded 23 border violations in the past 10 days. Senator Elizabeth Warren frowned. "Are we certain these are deliberate? Could their navigation systems be malfunctioning across their fleet?" Captain Rodriguez shook her head. "The pattern is too precise. Each incident tests a different part of our defense grid. They're mapping our response capabilities." Alex looked at the data. The red dots formed a clear pattern around human colonies and outposts. They're looking for weak points. From the back of the room, Dr. Alan Freeman spoke up. He was an older man who had studied alien civilizations for decades. "This matches historical patterns," he said, walking to the front. "The Xeltari did this same thing before attacking the Centauri system 50 years ago. Their entire civilization was destroyed." "That was before our time," Admiral Grant said. "We have treaties now." "Treaties they're breaking," Alex pointed out. A message alert sounded. Matthew Peterson, the administrator of Epsilon Prime Colony, appeared on the main screen. His face was dirty, and the video quality was poor. "This is an emergency transmission," he said. "We've lost power to half the colony. Communications are failing. There are reports of Xeltari ships in the area." The video cut out. The room filled with tense voices. "Epsilon Prime is home to 10,000 civilians," said Senator Warren. "We need to send help immediately." Admiral Grant turned to Alex. "Commander Daniels, prepare the Vigilant for emergency response. Take whatever ships are ready at the station." Alex nodded and left the room quickly. Within hours, the Vigilant and 2 smaller ships were racing toward Epsilon Prime. Dr. Olivia Mitchell joined Alex on the bridge. "I've been reviewing the data we collected from the first encounter," she said quietly. "There's something else you should know." She handed him her datapad. On it was a translation of Xeltari communications. "They have a different understanding of the Proxima incident," she explained. "When we showed mercy and didn't destroy their fleet, their leaders didn't see it as a noble act." Alex read the translation. "They thought we were weak." "Yes. In their culture, mercy is not a virtue. It's a sign that you're not strong enough to eliminate a threat." Lieutenant Kelly interrupted from his station. "Commander, we're receiving a distress call from a transport ship near Epsilon Prime." "Put it through," Alex ordered. The voice was filled with static. "This is civilian transport Morningstar. We're under attack by Xeltari ships. Our engines are damaged. We have 200 passengers. Please help." The message cut off abruptly. "Change course to intercept," Alex said. "Maximum speed." The Vigilant arrived at the transport's location 2 hours later. They were too late. The Morningstar drifted in space, torn apart by weapons fire. There were no survivors. "Scan for Xeltari ships," Alex ordered, his voice tight with anger. "Nothing in range, sir," Kelly replied. Olivia looked at the wreckage on the screen. They didn't need to attack a civilian transport. This was deliberate. "Sir," Kelly said, "we're receiving reports from Epsilon Prime. The colony is under full attack. The Xeltari have landed ground forces." Alex clenched his fists. "Set course for Epsilon Prime. Alert the fleet. This isn't a border incident. This is an invasion." As the Vigilant sped toward the colony, Alex thought about the Proxima incident again. Humanity had shown mercy then, believing it was the right thing to do. Now thousands of innocent people were paying for that decision. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. "This time, we won't make the same mistake." Ambassador Daniel Howard adjusted his formal uniform as the shuttle approached the Xeltari homeworld. The massive planet looked beautiful from space, with swirling clouds of purple and green. But Daniel felt no joy at the sight. He was here on a desperate mission. "Are you ready for this?" asked Samantha Green, his chief negotiator. Daniel nodded. "We have to try diplomacy one more time. If we can't stop this now, millions will die." Their shuttle landed at the Celtari capital, a sprawling city of tall, twisted towers that looked like giant insect hives. Security Chief Nathan Cole scanned the landing area with suspicious eyes. "I don't like this," he said quietly. "There are too many guards." "They claim it's for our protection," Daniel replied. "Of course they do," Nathan said. The human delegation was led through massive halls to meet the Celtari High Council. The room was hot and humid, just how the Celtari preferred it. 5 large insectoid aliens sat on raised platforms, looking down at the humans with compound eyes that revealed nothing of their thoughts. Daniel stepped forward. "Honored Council, I come with grave concerns. There have been multiple violations of our treaty, including armed attacks on civilian targets. We request an immediate end to hostilities." The lead counselor's antenna twitched. "These accusations are surprising, Ambassador. We have reports of human ships entering our territory. Perhaps what you call attacks are simply misunderstandings." Samantha Green activated a holographic display showing evidence of the Celtari attacks. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is the destruction of the Morning Star transport. 200 civilians died." The Celtari counselors clicked their mandibles together in what might have been discussion or laughter. It was hard to tell. "Technical malfunctions can lead to tragedy," one of them said. "If a ship exploded near one of our patrols, it was not our doing." Daniel felt his frustration rise but kept his voice calm. Then explained the ground forces on Epsilon Prime. "We have no forces there," the lead counselor insisted. "Perhaps you are confused." While the talks continued in circles, communications specialist Karen White slipped away to use the restroom. Instead, she found a quiet corner and activated a small device hidden in her sleeve. It picked up Celtari communications and translated them. What she heard made her blood run cold. When the delegation returned to their quarters that evening, Karen gathered everyone in a small room. Nathan swept it for listening devices while she spoke. "They're lying to us," she said. "I intercepted their military communications. They're not only planning for war, they've already started it. They're calling it the Great Purge." "We need to get this information back to Earth," Daniel said. "How soon can we leave?" "Our scheduled departure is tomorrow morning," Samantha said. Nathan looked worried. "That might be too late. I've been watching their security patterns. There are more guards around our ship now than when we arrived." Karen nodded. "According to what I heard, they plan to keep us here while their fleet moves into position for a major attack." "We need to leave now," Daniel decided. "Pack only what you need." They tried to reach their shuttle that night, moving quietly through the dimly lit corridors of the visitors' complex. They were almost there when alarms began to sound. "They know we're leaving," Nathan said, drawing his sidearm. "Run." They sprinted the last 100 yards to their shuttle. Daniel punched in the access code, while Nathan held off the approaching Celtari guards with warning shots. The shuttle's engines roared to life. Just as they were about to board, a blast hit the side of the ship. The explosion threw Daniel and Samantha to the ground. Nathan pulled Karen into the shuttle as more explosions followed. "Daniel, Samantha," Karen shouted, but Nathan held her back. "They're gone. We have to go now, or their deaths mean nothing." The shuttle lifted off with Celtari fighters in pursuit. Nathan flew low and fast, using the city's towers for cover. "Can we make it to the jump point?" Karen asked, tears on her face. "Not in this ship," Nathan said grimly. "But there's a maintenance station in the outer system. If we can reach it, we might find something faster." Behind them, the Celtari capital glowed with the light of war preparations. Karen clutched the data device containing proof of their treachery. Somehow, they had to get it back to Earth before it was too late. The sky above Mars' colony turned dark with Celtari ships. Governor Benjamin Hughes watched from the command center as the enemy vessels moved into attack formation. The colony's shields were at full power, but everyone knew they wouldn't hold for long. "Status report," he demanded. "Evacuation is at 30%. An officer replied. "We need more time." "Time is something we don't have," Benjamin said quietly. Outside, the first shots hit the shields. The entire building shook. On the screens, Benjamin could see strange energy weapons he had never seen before. The shields that should have lasted hours began to fail in minutes. "Governor, we're detecting some kind of quantum distortion in their weapons," a scientist called out. "They're bypassing our shield frequency." Benjamin hit the emergency broadcast button. "All citizens of Mars Colony, this is Governor Hughes. Proceed to evacuation ships immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Lieutenant Kate Reynolds sat in the cockpit of her transport ship. She was supposed to be on leave, visiting her brother on Mars. Now she was helping load hundreds of terrified civilians onto her ship. "How many more can we fit?" she asked her co-pilot. "Maybe 50. Then we're at maximum capacity." Kate nodded and kept the doors open as more people ran inside. Outside, the colony buildings were beginning to collapse as Celteri ground forces landed. Her communicator beeped. It was Governor Hughes. "Lieutenant, you need to take off now. The main dome is failing." "But there are still people coming," she argued. "And there always will be," he said sadly. "Save who you can. That's an order." Kate closed the doors with tears in her eyes. As her ship lifted off, she saw the main habitat dome crack open. Hundreds of people who couldn't reach ships were exposed to the thin Martian atmosphere. Her hand shook on the controls as she pushed the engines to maximum. Behind her, 5 more evacuation ships followed. Above them, Earth military vessels engaged the Celteri fleet, trying to clear a path for the escaping civilians. On Earth, General Joseph Martinez watched the reports coming in from Mars with a grim face. The screens in the war room showed similar attacks happening on 6 other colonies. The death toll was already in the hundreds of thousands and climbing fast. "Where is the Vigilant?" he asked. "Still at Epsilon Prime, sir. Commander Daniels reports they've evacuated 60% of the colonists, but the Celteri have control of the main settlement." The general nodded. "And the diplomatic team?" A communications officer looked up with a pained expression. "Sir, we received a transmission from Security Chief Cole. Their shuttle was attacked as they tried to leave. Ambassador Howard and Chief Negotiator Green were killed. Cole and Specialist White are attempting to reach neutral space with critical intelligence." General Martinez slammed his fist on the table. "So much for diplomacy." Dr. Laura Campbell entered the room with several data tablets. Her team had been working on defensive weapons for years, but most had never been built because of the peace treaties. "General, I need authorization to begin full production of the shield harmonizers and phase cannons. They're our best chance against their quantum weapons." "You have it," he said without hesitation. "What's your timeline?" "First units can be ready in 72 hours. Full deployment will take 2 weeks." "We may not have 2 weeks," the general said, pointing to the displays showing Celteri fleet movements. "They're pushing toward Earth." The door opened and President Edward Clark entered. The room fell silent. The president looked at the battle displays, then at the casualty reports. "When we defeated their fleet at Proxima," he said quietly, "I was the one who argued for mercy. I believed we could establish lasting peace." He paused, his face showing the weight of his decision. "I was wrong." He turned to General Martinez. "You have full authorization to deploy all military assets. No restrictions, no holding back." The president's eyes were hard. "Humanity showed mercy once. We will not make that mistake again." As the president spoke, more reports came in. The colony on Europa was gone. The research station at Alpha Centauri wasn't responding. A civilian transport carrying refugees had been destroyed with all 3,000 people aboard. Humanity was at war, And this time, there would be no mercy. Admiral Julia Morgan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, the largest battleship in Earth's fleet. 3 weeks had passed since the attacks began. Humanity had lost 4 colonies and 6 outposts, but they were finally starting to fight back. "Status report," she ordered. "Battle group is in position," her second-in-command replied. "All ships report ready." Julia nodded and looked at the tactical display. Instead of attacking Celteri population centers as expected, she had developed a different plan. Her ships were positioned near a key supply route that Celteri used to move troops and weapons. "Begin Operation Chokehold," she ordered. Across 20 light minutes of space, human ships moved into attack positions. Major Eric Taylor and his special operations team were already on the ground at the main Celteri supply base. They had slipped in 3 days earlier, gathering intelligence and planting explosives. "All teams in position," Eric reported over the secure channel. "Ready on your mark." Julia checked the time. "Execute in 3, 2, 1, mark." On the Celteri base, explosions ripped through fuel depots and weapons storage facilities. As Celteri ships rushed to defend the base, they flew straight into Julia's waiting fleet. "Fire all weapons," she ordered. The space around the supply base lit up with energy beams and missiles. Celteri ships tried to form a defensive line, but they were caught by surprise. On Julia's tactical screen, enemy ships began to disappear one by one. Back on Earth, Dr. Grace Lee worked with engineer Paul Johnson in a secure lab. They had captured a damaged Celteri shield generator and were taking it apart piece by piece. "Look at this," Paul said, pointing to a strange crystal component. "Their shields operate on a frequency modulation we've never seen before. That's why our weapons couldn't penetrate them at first." Grace studied the data on her screen. "If we reverse the polarity and add a phase shift to our weapons, we could bypass their shields completely." Paul finished her thought. "Let me run a simulation." He typed quickly, and the computer showed a model of a human weapon breaking through a Celteri shield. "It works," he said with excitement. "At least in theory." "How quickly can we modify our weapon systems?" Grace asked. "For the ships near Earth, a few days. For the fleet already engaged in battle, we can transmit the specifications, but they'll have to make the adjustments themselves." Grace immediately contacted Admiral Morgan with the news. On the UES Defiant, Julia received the transmission from Earth. "Engineering, how long to implement these modifications?" 4 hours for the first ship, Admiral. Then we can help the rest of the fleet." "Make it happen," she ordered. The battle continued around them. Even without the shield modifications, Julia's surprise attack was working. 3/4 of the Celteri supply base was destroyed, and Major Taylor's team had captured valuable intelligence before extracting safely to their ships. For the first time since the war began, humanity had won a significant victory. As the battle wound down, Julia faced a familiar choice. Her ships had cornered a group of damaged Celteri vessels trying to escape. Just like at the Proxima incident years ago, she could show mercy and let them go. The communication officer turned to her. "Admiral, we're receiving a surrender signal from the Celteri ships." Julia remembered Mars Colony. The civilian transports destroyed. The millions of human lives lost. She thought about the many times humanity had tried to make peace, only to be seen as weak. "Admiral, your orders?" her officer asked again. Julia's face hardened. "No quarter given. Destroy them all." "Yes, Admiral." The human fleet opened fire, and the remaining Celteri ships exploded into fragments of metal and light. Later, in her private quarters, Julia recorded her report to Earth Command. "Operation Chokehold was a success. We destroyed their main supply base and 37 enemy ships. We captured intelligence that may help us understand their attack plans." She paused before adding, "When enemy ships attempted to surrender, I ordered their destruction. I take full responsibility for this decision." She ended the transmission and stared out at the stars. Humanity had changed. The war had changed them all. She wondered what they would become before this was over, but she knew there was no going back. The Xeltari had pushed humanity too far, and now they would learn what that meant. Captain Lisa Turner's exploration vessel drifted silently through the asteroid field. Her ship's engines were powered down to avoid detection. For the past 2 months, humanity had been pushing back against the Xeltari attack. Now they had found something hidden deep in enemy territory. How much longer until we can safely approach? Lisa asked her navigation officer. Another 20 minutes, Captain. The patrol ships should be out of range by then. Lisa nodded and turned to Dr. Vincent Clark, who led the science team. Are your people ready? As ready as we can be, Vincent replied. If the intel from Special Operations is correct, what we find in that facility could change everything. Major Eric Taylor's team had discovered records of a secret research base during their raid on the Xeltari supply depot. The coordinates pointed to this remote asteroid field, far from normal space routes. When the patrol ships had moved on, Lisa's vessel approached a large asteroid that appeared ordinary from a distance. But as they got closer, they could see artificial structures built into its surface. No signs of active defenses, the tactical officer reported. I think they believe this place is well hidden enough not to need heavy protection. Prepare the boarding team, Lisa ordered. Vincent led the team across to the asteroid base. They wore special suits designed to protect against both the vacuum of space and potential Xeltari traps. Inside, the corridors were dark and narrow, built for the insect-like Xeltari rather than humans. Life signs? Vincent asked over the comm. Minimal, replied Specialist Heather Ross, who monitored their equipment. Just a few readings, probably maintenance staff. They moved deeper into the facility, avoiding the few Xeltari workers by using side passages. Finally, they reached a large chamber that made them all stop in horror. Inside were rows of transparent containers. Each one held a human body, connected to tubes and wires. Some were clearly dead, but others showed signs of life. My God, Vincent whispered. They're experimenting on our people. Heather approached one of the computer terminals and began downloading data. Prisoners from the colonies they attacked, she said, her voice shaking. According to these files, they'd been studying human biology in detail. Vincent examined the equipment around the containers. This isn't just study. They're extracting specific genetic sequences. In a smaller room connected to the main chamber, they found more evidence of the Xeltari's true intentions. Heather's face went pale as she read the translated documents. It's not just about defeating us, she said. They want to absorb us. These are plans for incorporating human genetic traits into their own species. Why would they do that? One of the team members asked. Vincent looked grim. Our adaptability, our creativity. They want to take those qualities for themselves. After wiping us out as competition, Heather added, still reading the documents. They collected all the data they could and placed charges to destroy the facility. As they made their way back to the ship, they encountered 2 Xeltari researchers. The fight was brief and violent. One team member was injured, but both Xeltari were killed. Back on the ship, Lisa looked at the data they had recovered. This changes everything, she said. The Xeltari don't just want our planets or resources. They see us as raw material to improve their species. Vincent nodded grimly. They've done this before. The data shows references to at least 3 other species they've encountered, all extinct now. We need to get this information back to Earth immediately, Lisa said. As their ship moved away from the asteroid field, they sent the charges. The Xeltari research facility exploded in a bright flash, destroying the evidence of their terrible experiments. On the long journey back to Earth, the crew was unusually quiet. The horror of what they had discovered weighed heavily on them all. Humanity was not just fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for the right to exist at all. Professor Samuel Wright of the Ethical Oversight Committee received their report first. As he read through the evidence of the Xeltari's plans, his hands trembled. They've been warning us all along, he said to no one in particular. Every species they've encountered tried to tell us what the Celtari really are. We dismissed it as propaganda or fear. He closed the file and looked out the window at the earth below. Now we know the truth. President Michelle Bennett stood at the window of her office, looking out at the stars. 6 months had passed since the war began. Humanity had fought back bravely, winning battles and reclaiming some lost territory. But the cost had been terrible. Billions dead, colonies destroyed, and still that Celtari kept coming. Madam President, her aide said softly, "They're ready for you." Michelle nodded and walked to the conference room, where Earth's top military and scientific leaders waited. At the head of the table sat Dr. Jack Harrison, director of Project Firewall. "Please begin, Doctor," Michelle said as she took her seat. Jack activated a holographic display showing complex molecules. After studying the biological samples from the Celtari Research Facility, we've identified a unique vulnerability in their physiology. He pointed to a specific part of the molecule. This receptor is present in all Celtari. It doesn't exist in any other known life form, including humans. We've developed a compound that targets only this receptor. And what does this compound do? Admiral Morgan asked. It shuts down their nervous system, Jack explained. Death would be quick, almost painless. The room fell silent as everyone understood what he was proposing. Not a conventional weapon, but a biological one that could target an entire species. How would it be delivered? General Martinez asked. Through their atmosphere, their water. It would spread quickly among their population. Michelle looked around the table. This would affect all Celtari, not just their military. Civilians, children. Fleet Commander Adam Scott spoke up. Madam President, I've led forces against the Celtari for 6 months. I've seen no distinction in their society between civilian and military. They are all part of their hive mentality, all committed to our extinction. Commander Scott is right, said Dr. Grace Lee, the xenopsychology expert. The evidence we gathered shows that Celtari view other sentient species as resources to be harvested. Their entire civilization is built on this principle. Michelle rubbed her temples. How many other options do we have? Admiral Morgan displayed the latest battle maps. We're holding them back, but at a terrible cost. For every Celtari ship we destroy, we lose one of our own. At current rates, humanity will be extinct within 2 years. The president stood and walked around the table slowly. Before I make my decision, I want to be absolutely clear. This weapon, Project Firewall, it would only affect the Celtari, no other species. Correct, Jack confirmed. We've tested it extensively. It targets a genetic sequence unique to the Celtari. Michelle took a deep breath. Prepare the weapon, but do not deploy it yet. First, we give them one last chance. Within hours, strike forces led by Commander Scott positioned themselves throughout Celtari space, ready to deploy the weapon. Lieutenant Nicole Davis, the communications officer, prepared a message to be broadcast to all Celtari worlds simultaneously. Michelle reviewed the message before approving it. This is our final warning. Make it clear. From the bridge of his command ship, Scott gave the order to broadcast. Nicole's voice, translated into the Celtari language, reached every corner of their empire. Attention all Celtari. This is Lieutenant Nicole Davis of the United Earth Government. We have discovered your true intentions toward humanity and all other sentient species. We know about your experiments and your plans to harvest our genetic material after our extinction. We showed mercy once. We will not make that mistake again. Withdraw your forces from all human territories immediately. Provide reparations for the lives you have taken. Commit to permanent isolation from other sentient species. You have 24 Earth hours to comply or face extinction. This is our final warning. The message ended. For a long moment, there was silence across all channels. Commander Scott waited, his finger hovering over the command to deploy Project Firewall. Any response? he asked Nicole. Nothing yet, sir. They waited through the long hours. When the deadline was just minutes away, the sensors lit up. Multiple Celtari fleets launching. The tactical officer shouted, "They're attacking the inner colonies." Scott looked at Nicole, then at the countdown timer. "They've made their choice," he said quietly. He opened a channel to Earth. "Madam President, the Celtari have responded with attacks against our colonies. Request permission to deploy Project Firewall." On Earth, Michelle closed her eyes briefly before answering. "Permission granted, Commander. May God forgive us." Scott pressed the button. Across Celtari space, the weapon was released into their atmospheres. The final warning had been given. Humanity would survive, but the cost to their soul would be measured in the extinction of an entire species.